My family erased me for 8 long years on purpose. I always called, sent gifts. They never called back, not even one visit. After pushing for so long, I finally had enough and chose to end it. I changed my name. I sold my home, shut off my phone, vanished without a trace. 6 months later, imagine spending 8 agonizing years desperately trying to connect with the people who were supposed to be your family, only to have them ignore every single attempt. What if the very people who claim to love you were just waiting for the perfect, calculated moment to try and take everything you had? Because that's what happened to me. And the day I stopped playing their game, my entire life turned upside down. Before we dive in, if you're watching, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. Now, let me take you back to the exact moment I painfully realized I was never truly a daughter to them. Just an emergency fund with a pulse. I was just 26, barely out of my 20s, when I finally landed my first real promotion. Junior accountant at Morrison and Blake Consulting in Denver. It wasn't a glamorous title, no, but it was mine. I'd earned it. 3 years of 70-hour weeks, enough spreadsheets to wallpaper my entire apartment, all culminating in that moment. The first person I called, of course, was my father. I remember the phone ringing 4 times, each ring a fresh pang of hope before his all-too-familiar voicemail picked up. "Hi, you've reached Richard Sterling. Leave a message." I left one, then another the next day, and another 3 days after that. My heart ached a little more with each unanswered call. He never, ever called back. A week later, there I was, scrolling through Facebook during my lunch break when it hit me, like a punch to the gut. A photo. 47 people, all gathered around my half-brother Derek at his high school graduation party. Balloons, a towering 3-tier cake, and there was my father, his arm wrapped proudly around Derek's shoulders. Both of them beaming, looking like they'd just conquered the world. I stared at the screen, my breath catching. I hadn't been invited. I hadn't even known it was happening. Still, I told myself, maybe it's an oversight. I sent Derek a congratulations card with a $500 check from my father tucked inside. I tried to make sense of it. Maybe the mail got lost. Maybe they tried to reach me and couldn't. I made endless excuses for them, because that's what I'd been doing since I was 12 years old, ever since my mother died and my father remarried Barbara 2 years later. Derek cashed that check within 3 days. I know because I checked my bank statement obsessively, day after day, waiting for some acknowledgement. A thank you text, a phone call, anything, nothing, absolutely nothing. That was the very first time I started keeping records. Call it a professional habit. I'm an accountant, after all. But it was more than that. It was a desperate attempt to quantify the neglect, to make sense of the growing void. Every unanswered call, every unacknowledged gift, every silence that stretched longer and colder than the one before. I didn't know it then, standing there in my tiny apartment, but those meticulous records would eventually save my life. Or, at the very least, save me from losing everything I had worked so incredibly hard for. The pattern, though I stubbornly refused to see it for what it truly was, became agonizingly clear over the next 5 years. Derek called me for the first time in 18 months when he was 23. "No, how are you, sis?" No small talk, just a flat, almost demanding, "I need $8,000 for a startup. It's a sure thing. I'll pay you back in 6 months." I wired the money that very afternoon, clinging to some naive hope of connection. The startup, some app for matching dog walkers with pet owners, folded just 4 months later. Derek never, not once, mentioned repaying me. When I finally dared to bring it up in one of my countless unanswered voicemails, I got a text back. Just a text. "Things are tight. You understand." I understood. I always understood. Or so I told myself. 3 years ago, Barbara, my stepmother, texted me for the first time in 26 months. I still remember staring at my phone, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, thinking, maybe, just maybe, finally something has changed. Her message was short, sharp, and to the point. Emergency roof damage from storm. Need $15,000 for repairs. Your father's credit is maxed. Please help family. Without hesitation, I transferred the money within 48 hours, draining half of my carefully built emergency fund. 2 months later, there it was. Her Instagram post. Barbara, beaming, leaning against a brand new pearl, white Lexus RX. The caption, birthday gift to myself, #blessed, new car smell. The roof? As far as I could tell from every single photo, it looked exactly the same. No repairs. $23,000. That's how much I'd poured into them over 5 years. And that's not even counting the smaller gifts, the cards with cash tucked inside, the subscription boxes at Christmas. $23,000, and in return, 0 thank you notes, 0 visits, 0 return calls. But I kept sending those birthday cards. I kept trying, because deep down, I still clung to the belief that blood meant something, that if I just loved them enough, if I just gave enough, eventually they'd love me back. I was so wrong. But it would take me 3 agonizing more years to truly admit that to myself. 14 months. That's how long it had been since anyone in my family had acknowledged my existence in any form. I counted, not because I wanted to, but because the silence had become so deafening, so absolute, that I started marking the days off a calendar, like a prisoner scratching lines into a cell wall. During those 14 months, I called 17 times. Every single call went straight to voicemail. I left messages that ranged from concerned, "Is everything okay? Please call me back," to desperately honest, "I just want to know if I did something wrong. Please." Just voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. I even sent a Christmas card last December with a $200 gift card for each of them. Richard, Barbara, Derek. I tracked the package, watched it move through the system. Signature confirmed. Delivered December 21st at 2:47 p.m. No response. Not a text. Not an email. Not even an automated thank you. Just nothing. By March, a cold, hard truth I'd been running from for 8 years finally started to sink in. I didn't have a family anymore. Maybe, just maybe, I never really had. I came home from work one Friday evening, utterly exhausted from month-end closing, and checked my mailbox out of pure habit. Bills, junk mail, another credit card offer, and then nestled between a water bill and a furniture catalog, I saw it. A cream-colored envelope, heavy card stock, my name written in elegant calligraphy across the front. In the upper left corner, embossed in gold, the Sterling family. My hands actually trembled as I opened it. Inside, "You are cordially invited to celebrate the 65th birthday of Richard Allen Sterling. The Grand Palazzo Hotel, Houston, Texas, April 15th, 6 p.m. black tie optional." After 14 months of absolute, soul-crushing silence, they'd finally remembered I existed. The question wasn't if I should go. The question screamed in my head, why now? I stared at that invitation for 2 long, silent hours. 87 guests. That's what the RSVP card indicated. A celebration for close friends, business associates, and cherished family. The Grand Palazzo Hotel. I looked it up. Houston's most exclusive event venue. The kind of place where oil executives and real estate moguls threw their milestone parties. I saw the price tag online. A minimum booking fee of $35,000 for their grand ballroom alone. This wasn't a casual dinner. This was a statement. And somehow, after 8 years of being treated like a ghost, I'd suddenly made the guest list. Don't go. That was Marcus Webb, my colleague, and honestly, my closest friend at Morrison and Blake. We'd worked together for 6 years, and he knew my family situation better than anyone. The unanswered calls, the one-way money transfers, the holiday cards I sent just to avoid that crushing silence. Why would they invite you now? Marcus asked, spinning a pen between his fingers. his brow furrowed in concern. After 14 months of absolutely nothing? I mumbled, maybe he's sick? Maybe this is his way of reaching out. Finally. Marcus shook his head slowly, a heavy sigh escaping him. People don't change after 8 years without a reason, Fiona. And usually not good reasons. He paused, then said, "Let me check something before you even think about booking a flight. Sterling Investments, right? Your dad's company." I nodded, a knot forming in my stomach. Public filings are available through the Harris County Clerk's Office. Real estate LLCs have to report certain things. Let me just take a look as a favor. I wanted to argue so badly. I wanted to believe that this invitation was a sign that my father had finally realized what he'd been missing, that he truly wanted his daughter back in his life. But the cold, calculating accountant in me, the part that had been meticulously keeping records for 8 years, knew Marcus was right. Something about this invitation didn't just not add up, it felt sinister. "Okay," I said, quietly, my voice barely a whisper. "Check, but I'm probably going anyway." Marcus called me 3 days later at 9:47 p.m. My phone buzzed, startling me. I was in my pajamas, halfway through a glass of wine, still trying to distract myself from the agonizing question of whether I should splurge on a new dress for the party. "Fiona, you need to see this," he said, his voice urgent. "I'm sending you a file right now." My laptop chimed. The email contained a PDF, 17 horrifying pages of public filings, court documents, and lien records for Sterling Investments, LLC. What I read next made my stomach drop into my shoes. Sterling Heights. That was my father's flagship project. 12 luxury townhouses in a gated community on the outskirts of Houston. According to these documents, construction was 7 months behind schedule. The original completion date was last September. It was now April, and the frames weren't even finished. And it got worse. 3 contractors had filed lawsuits for non-payment. Martinez Construction for $89,000, Apex Electrical for $67,000, and Premier Plumbing for $124,000. A staggering total of $280,000 outstanding. The bank loan, $2.1 million from First National at 8.5% interest, had an extension deadline of April 20th. Just 5 days after the birthday party. "If he doesn't secure additional capital by the 20th, Marcus explained, his voice tight, the bank can call the entire loan. Force a sale. The project goes into receivership." I did the math in my head. Even selling the partially completed units wouldn't cover the debt. Richard Sterling was about to lose everything. And how much would he need to stay afloat? Roughly $150,000. Just enough to pay off the contractors and convince the bank to extend. I had $127,000 in my savings account. Suddenly, the cream-colored invitation in my hand made perfect, sickening sense. "They don't want me there," I whispered, the realization like a shard of ice in my chest. "They want my money." I bought the plane ticket anyway. $342, one way. Denver to Houston, April 14th, arriving at 6:15 p.m. the night before the party. I told myself I had to see this through. I needed to look my father in the eyes, to understand, once and for all, whether I had ever been anything more than a glorified ATM, a financial safety net. But I wasn't going in blind. Not this time. No way. The night before my flight, I spent 4 meticulous, white-knuckled hours printing every single piece of evidence I had. Bank statements from the last 8 years, showing every single transfer I'd ever made to the Sterling family, each one dated, annotated, highlighted. Screenshots of damning text messages, call logs from my phone carrier, receipts for gifts sent via registered mail, with signature confirmations. I organized everything into a sturdy manila folder. Then, just in case, I copied all the key documents onto a USB drive that I tucked deep into my carry-on. An old habit, the accountant's mantra. Always, always have a backup. At 7 a.m. on April 14th, standing at the gate, I made one final, crucial call to Marcus. "If you don't hear from me in 48 hours," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "send everything to my personal email. The bank statements, the court filings, all of it." "Fiona," he pleaded, "this is insane. You know what they're planning. Why walk straight into this trap?" I watched the boarding announcement flash on the screen, feeling the pull, the undeniable need. "Because I need to know," I told him, a raw honesty in my voice. "I need to hear them say it or not say it. I need to close this chapter one way or another." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, then just said, "Be careful, Fiona, and call me the second you're out of there." "I will," I promised. I boarded that plane, 8 years of undeniable evidence clutched in my bag, and a knot in my stomach that simply wouldn't loosen. I wasn't going to Houston to reconcile. I was going to find out the truth, whatever the hell that cost me. The Grand Palazzo Hotel. It looked exactly like its glossy website photos, and exactly like the kind of place where I, Fiona Sterling, simply did not belong. Crystal chandeliers the size of compact cars glittered overhead. Marble floors, polished to a dizzying mirror shine, reflected the discreet movements of staff in crisp black uniforms, gliding silently between guests. Guests wearing watches worth more than my annual rent. I caught my reflection in a gilded mirror near the entrance. My dress was black, simple, purchased from Nordstrom Rack for $89 during last year's clearance sale. It was the nicest thing I owned, my special occasion outfit. Here, surrounded by custom Valentino gowns and Tom Ford suits, I felt like the hired help, an outsider looking in. The grand ballroom. 87 guests, just as the RSVP card had promised. Clusters of well-dressed strangers. Champagne flutes clutched in manicured hands. A live jazz quartet played softly in the corner. A champagne tower glittered under strategic lighting. And there, at the glittering center of it all, stood my father. Richard Sterling, at 65, looked distinguished in a way that only money could buy. Silver hair swept back perfectly, a suit that probably cost more than my car, cufflinks catching the light as he gestured grandly. Beside him, Barbara shimmered in emerald green silk, diamonds at her throat and ears. Derek lounged nearby, a smirk playing on his lips in a tailored navy blazer, his Rolex flashing every time he raised his glass. This was their world, their stage. Every single person in that opulent room was there to celebrate Richard Sterling's success, his impeccable taste, his undeniable status. And I stood at the very edge of it all in my $89 dress, clutching that unassuming manila folder inside my bag like it was the only lifeline I had. Barbara spotted me first. Her smile, that practiced society smile, flickered for just a nanosecond before settling into something that almost looked welcoming. "Oh," she said, her voice carrying just enough for nearby guests to hear. "You actually came." My father turned at Barbara's words, and for a split second, I saw something flash across his face. Was it surprise? Calculation? It vanished before I could even name it, instantly replaced by a wide, toothy smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Fiona." He crossed the distance in 3 long strides, arms outstretched. "My daughter. It's been too long." 8 years, Dad. Has it really? I heard myself say, the sarcasm barely contained. He pulled me into a hug that felt utterly rehearsed, a perfunctory squeeze. "Time flies. You look wonderful," he boomed. "I called 288 times," I replied, my voice flat. "You never answered." Barbara inserted herself smoothly between us, her hand possessively on my father's arm. "We've been so busy with the business, Fiona," she purred, her eyes darting nervously. "You know how it is. Real estate never sleeps." Derek drifted over, champagne sloshing precariously in his glass. "Hey, sis. Looking good. Got anything exciting going on? New job? New investments?" His eyes glinted with barely concealed expectation. "Oh, do you need more money for another startup, Derek?" I asked, my voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. His smile tightened just a fraction. He muttered something about just making conversation. Around us, guests glanced our way with polite, curious stares. The prodigal daughter returned for the patriarch's celebration. I could almost hear the narrative forming in their heads. Family reunion, heartwarming moment, perhaps a toast later about the importance of togetherness. They had no idea. My father's hand found my elbow, steering me gently, yet firmly, toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. Come, I want to introduce you to some people. We have so much to catch up on. His grip was firm, purposeful. I saw Barbara catch his eye, and she gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. A silent signal, a confirmation. They'd planned this. Whatever came next, they'd rehearsed it. Actually, Richard said, lowering his voice conspiratorially as we approached a side door, there's something important I need to discuss with you first. In private. The trap was closing, and I, with my manila folder full of truth, was walking straight into it. Before we could even reach that side door, the jazz band abruptly stopped playing. A harsh spotlight swung from the ceiling, landing squarely on the small stage at the front of the ballroom. My father's hand tightened on my elbow, his grip almost painful. Wait, he murmured. First this. He guided me toward the stage, and a wave of growing unease washed over me. He intended for me to stand beside him, in front of everyone. The event coordinator, a nervous young man, handed Richard a microphone. 87 faces, suddenly silent, turned our way. Friends, colleagues, family, Richard began, his voice rich with practiced warmth, dripping with sincerity. Thank you all for being here to celebrate this milestone with me. 65 years, and I owe every success to the people in this room. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Champagne glasses clinked. But tonight, he continued, his voice swelling with false emotion, I want to acknowledge someone very special. He turned to me, and I felt the oppressive weight of every single gaze in the room. My daughter, Fiona, has finally come home after many years away. A pause for dramatic effect. The Sterling family has always valued unity above all else, and having her here tonight means more than I can express. The applause swelled, genuine smiles everywhere. A woman near the front even dabbed at her eyes. They were buying it. Every single person in that room was watching Richard Sterling play the role of the loving father, welcoming his estranged daughter, and they believed him. Completely. I spotted a man in a gray suit near the bar, notebook in hand, scribbling furiously. Press. Of course, there was press. This wasn't just a birthday party. It was a meticulously orchestrated performance. Family always comes first, Richard concluded, squeezing my shoulder, a possessive gesture. No matter how far we wander, we always find our way back home. More applause. Camera flashes. I stood there, a smile frozen on my face, understanding with terrifying clarity what was happening. He wasn't welcoming me back. He was rewriting history right there in front of 87 eager witnesses. And they had all just watched him do it. The side room. It was smaller than I expected, a private parlor adjoining the ballroom, decorated in the same opulent style, but blessedly without the suffocating crowd. A gleaming mahogany table sat at its center, and on that table a neatly stacked pile of documents. Barbara and Derek were already inside, waiting like vultures. The door clicked shut behind us, instantly muffling the sounds of the party, creating a suffocating quiet. Now we can talk, Richard said, a predatory gleam in his eyes, gesturing toward the papers. Have a seat, sweetheart. I didn't sit. My legs were locked, rooted to the spot. I walked slowly to the table and looked at the top document. Authorization of fund transfer. Sterling Investments, LLC. The account number was partially redacted. The amount line was left blank, but right beside it, in pencil, was $127,000. Someone's chilling note to themselves. What is this? I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. An opportunity, Richard smoothly countered, settling into a chair across from me, relaxed, confident, like a spider in its web. Sterling Heights is going to be the most prestigious development in Harris County. Pre-sales are already exceeding projections. We just need a small capital injection to get through a temporary cash flow situation. You want my savings, I stated, not asked. I want you to invest in your family's legacy, he purred, that fake smile back. 18 months. You'll double your return. I guarantee it. I flipped to page 3, and there, buried deep in the fine print, was exactly what I was looking for. Non-refundable investment in the event of project dissolution or bankruptcy. My heart dropped. I slipped my phone from my purse and, as casually as I could, snapped a photo of the page. Quick, precise, the accountant's instinct taking over. What are you doing? Barbara's voice sharpened, cutting through the thick air. Reviewing the terms, I replied, meeting her glare. I am a professional accountant, Barbara. I read contracts before I sign them. If you don't sign, Barbara said, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper as she stepped closer, her eyes glittering with malice, everyone out there will know exactly what kind of daughter you are, abandoning your father when he needs you most. There it was, the thinly veiled threat, the iron fist in the velvet glove. Richard leaned forward, his salesman's smile firmly, chillingly in place. The bank's extension deadline is Monday at 8 a.m., Fiona. That gives us 72 hours to secure additional capital. Once we're over this hurdle, the project moves forward and everyone profits, including you. 72 hours. I repeated, the words tasting like ash. And if I don't agree? Richard spread his hands in a theatrical gesture. Then First National calls the loan. Sterling Heights goes into foreclosure. 3 years of work gone. You'd really let that happen to your own family. Derek chimed in, still lounging against the wall, a picture of entitled indifference, sloshing his champagne. Come on, sis. It's not like you have kids or a husband draining your accounts. You've got the money just sitting there. What's the big deal? Something cold, something utterly desolate, settled in my chest. Not anger yet. Not quite. Something quieter. A profound, heartbreaking recognition. Let me make sure I understand, I said, my voice unnervingly even. You haven't returned a single phone call in 8 years. You didn't come to my promotion celebration. You didn't acknowledge any birthday, any holiday, any gift I sent. And now, you want me to hand over every single dollar I've saved since I was 22. Barbara's carefully composed expression flickered, a momentary crack in her facade. We've been busy, she hissed. But you cashed the checks, though. Every single one. Derek's $8,000 for his startup. Your $15,000 for the roof repair. I met Barbara's gaze, a slow, deliberate smile forming on my lips. That was a nice Lexus, by the way. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Richard's smile had tightened, an ugly grimace now. This isn't about the past, Fiona, he snapped. This is about family stepping up when it matters. You raised me until I was 18, I countered, my voice gaining strength. That was your legal obligation. After that, I paid my own way. $68,000 in student loans, 9 years to pay them off. Don't you dare frame your legal obligation as a favor I need to repay. Barbara stepped forward, and I saw the cruel, calculating glint in her eyes. If you won't sign in here, she said, a wicked little smirk playing on her lips, perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more public. I should have seen it coming. I should have. Barbara didn't even wait for my response. She spun on her heel, threw open the heavy door to the ballroom, and then, with a voice that managed to pierce through the jazz quartet and the champagne chatter, she shrieked, Everyone! Everyone, please! I need your attention. The music faltered. Conversations died mid-sentence. 87 faces, a sea of bewildered curiosity, turned toward us. Barbara positioned herself dramatically in the doorway, framed perfectly by the glittering ballroom light, one hand pressed theatrically to her chest. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," she wailed, her voice trembling with the most nauseatingly rehearsed emotion. "But I need you all to know what's happening. Richard's daughter, the one he welcomed home tonight with such open arms, has just refused to help her own father in his time of need." Murmurs, a collective gasp, rippled through the crowd. 8 years! Barbara's voice rose, a venomous crescendo. 8 years she's been gone, never called, never visited, and now, when her father asks for help, a simple family investment, she says no. Right here, at his birthday celebration. I stood frozen in the doorway, a numb observer, watching the narrative spin, wildly out of her control. Or was it? No, that wasn't right. This was her control. Every single word, every tear, every dramatic gesture, precisely calculated to make me the villain. We tried so hard to reach her. Barbara dramatically continued, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. All those years, but she was just too busy with her life in Colorado. Too busy for her own family. Barbara. Richard's voice was sharp, a warning. That's enough. But it wasn't enough. Not for her. She had found her audience, and she was playing to them with the practiced skill of someone who'd spent decades performing the role of devoted wife and stepmother. The guests looked at me with expressions that ranged from pity to outright disgust. The man in the gray suit was writing furiously, his pen flying across the page. I had become the villain in my own story, unless I changed the script. The whispers started immediately, a low, buzzing hum. Abandoned her own father. 8 years, can you imagine? And at his birthday party, of all places. I stood in the doorway, 87 pairs of eyes dissecting me, judging me, finding me utterly, terribly wanting. A woman in pearls shook her head, slowly, a judgment in every sway. A man in a 3-piece suit muttered something to his wife that made her gasp. Then, an elderly woman I vaguely recognized as a distant aunt approached me, disappointment carved into every line of her face. "Your father gave you everything," she hissed, her voice low and furious. "Put a roof over your head, sent you to school, and this is how you repay him." I opened my mouth to respond, but what could I say? That he stopped paying for anything the day I turned 18? That I'd worked 2 jobs through college? That I'd sent them $23,000 over 5 years and never received so much as a thank you? They wouldn't believe me. They'd already chosen their story. The journalist in the gray suit was watching me with undisguised interest, his pen hovering over his notebook. I could almost see the headline forming behind his eyes. Family drama erupts at real estate mogul's birthday gala. Richard stood silently behind. Barbara now, his expression carefully neutral, letting his wife do the dirty work while he maintained plausible deniability. Derek, from the champagne table, offered a knowing, triumphant smirk. And that's when something finally snapped inside me. 8 years, 288 unanswered calls, $23,000 sent into a void. And this public humiliation was how they treated me when I finally said no. I had spent my entire adult life trying to earn love from people who saw me as nothing more than an emergency fund. I was done trying, completely. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shockingly quiet, but somehow cutting through the buzzing hum of the crowd. I began walking, a strange calm settling over me, toward the stage. The microphone was still on its stand, exactly where Richard had left it. The harsh spotlight still illuminated the empty space. I stepped into its blinding glare before anyone could stop me. "Everyone!" My voice boomed through the speakers, clear and unervingly steady. "I'd like 5 minutes of your time." The room went utterly still. Barbara, her face twisted with a mixture of alarm and dawning horror, started to move toward me. "Fiona, what do you think? 5 minutes," I repeated, my gaze sweeping across the stunned faces in the crowd. "Then you can go back to your champagne and your assumptions. But I think you deserve to hear the full story before you decide who the villain is." I saw Richard's jaw clench, a muscle twitching. Derek slowly, carefully set down his champagne glass. The journalist in gray leaned forward, his pen poised, hungry. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone. "My name is Fiona Sterling. I'm 34 years old. I'm a senior management accountant at Morrison and Blake Consulting in Denver, and I've been trying to stay connected to this family for 8 years." I looked directly at Barbara, then at Richard, then at the 87 witnesses who had already decided I was the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her dying father. "You've heard one version of this story tonight," I said, my voice gaining power with every word. "Now let me show you another." My hands, surprisingly, were perfectly steady as I connected my phone to the ballroom's display system, the very same system they'd used earlier for that self-congratulatory slideshow of Richard's greatest achievements. The main screen behind me flickered to life, bathing the stage in a cool blue light. "I've been silent for 8 years," I declared, my voice ringing out. "I've sent money when asked, called when ignored, and made endless excuses for people who couldn't be bothered to remember my birthday. Tonight, I'm going to stop being silent." I pressed play. "Let's start with the numbers. But pause for a second, everyone. What would you have said, standing up there, in front of 87 people who already thought you were the villain? Would you have walked away, or would you have fought back? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. All right, let me tell you exactly what I showed them. The first document, a cold, hard fact, appeared on the giant screen behind me. A bank statement from Chase, dated January 2017. "This," I explained, my voice steady, betraying none of the fire raging inside me, "is a wire transfer for $8,000, sent to Derek Sterling for a startup investment that failed 4 months later. No repayment, no acknowledgement, ever." I swiped to the next image. March 2021. $15,000 transferred to Barbara Sterling for emergency roof repairs. I let that sit for a heavy moment. 2 months later, Barbara posted a picture of her brand new Lexus on Instagram. The caption, #blessed new car smell. The roof, as far as I or anyone else could tell, remains unchanged. Murmurs, like a rising tide, swept through the crowd. Barbara's face had gone utterly, sickly pale. "Over the past 8 years," I continued, my voice unwavering, "I have transferred $23,000 to members of this family. Every single transfer is documented here. Bank statements, wire confirmations, dates, amounts." I pulled up the call log next. 3 pages, each entry, each attempt highlighted in angry yellow. 288 phone calls, all outgoing. You can see the duration here. Most of them end at 0 minutes and 0 seconds. "That's what happens," I explained, my eyes fixed on the crowd, "when you go straight to voicemail." Someone in the crowd coughed nervously. "And here," I switched to a screenshot, "are the only 2 text messages I've received from this family in 8 years. Both, as you can see, are requesting money. No, how are you? No, happy birthday. No, we miss you." The elderly aunt who had scolded me earlier was now staring at the screen, her mouth slightly agape. "I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me," I said, my gaze hardening. "I'm showing you facts. Because someone just told this entire room that I abandoned my family. The numbers suggest a very, very different story." I looked directly at Richard, his face now a mask of rigid fury. "Your turn to explain, Dad. Or should I keep going?" He didn't move. He couldn't. "Fine," I said, a dangerous calm in my voice. "Let me continue." I pulled up the next set of documents. The public filings Marcus had sent me, the ones that laid bare the truth. Sterling Heights, I announced, pointing to the screen. 12 luxury townhouses. My father's flagship project. These are public records from the Harris County Clerk's office. Anyone in this room can verify them. The first filing appeared, a lawsuit from Martinez Construction, dated last October, for $89,000 in unpaid invoices. 3 contractors are currently suing Sterling Investments for non-payment, I stated, my voice echoing in the sudden silence. Total outstanding, $280,000. I heard a collective gasp. An older gentleman near the bar set down his drink with deliberate, shaky care. The project is 7 months behind schedule. The bank loan, $2.1 million from First National, has an extension deadline of April 20th. That's 5 days from now. I pulled up the final, damning document, the authorization of fund transfer I'd photographed just 30 minutes earlier. This, I said, the words heavy with accusation, is what they asked me to sign tonight. See this clause here. I zoomed in. Non-refundable investment in the event of project dissolution. My eyes swept across the now completely silent room. That means if the project fails, which it very well might, according to these documents, I lose everything. The air crackled with tension. They didn't invite me to this party because they missed me, I declared, my voice ringing with righteous indignation. They invited me because they needed $127,000, my entire life savings, 12 years of work, and they wanted me to hand it over with absolutely no recourse if it all collapses. I looked directly at the journalist, whose hand was now blurring across his notebook. You want to verify any of this? Harris County Clerk's office. Case numbers are right there on the screen behind me. Richard finally spoke, his voice a low growl of pure fury. Fiona, you're destroying this family. No, Dad. I shot back, my voice unwavering. You already did that. Richard stepped toward the stage, his composure, the carefully constructed facade, cracking like thin ice. This is private family business, he boomed, that authoritative voice he used to close multi-million-dollar deals, now laced with desperation. Fiona is clearly emotional and confused. I'm a certified management accountant, Dad, I stated, my voice hard as stone. I literally analyze financial documents for a living. I am not confused. Barbara rushed forward, her heels clicking a furious rhythm against the marble. She's trying to sabotage us. Years of silence. And now she shows up to humiliate her own father in front of his friends and colleagues. You invited me, Barbara, I reminded her, my eyes blazing. You sent the invitation to my address. We were trying to include you, to bring the family together, she shrieked, a desperate, pathetic lie. I held up my phone, still connected to the display. Should I pull up the email you sent to Dad's lawyer 6 weeks ago? The one where you specifically mentioned my savings account and discussed the necessity of presenting a unified family front to secure my cooperation. Barbara's face went utterly white, all color draining from her cheeks. How did you? You CC'd Dad's company email, I explained, my voice still eerily calm, which he shares with his business partner, who shares an account with my firm. I'm very good at my job, Barbara. Derek, looking flustered and swaying slightly, finally pushed away from the bar. This is ridiculous. She's just mad because she never fit in. She never, Derek. Richard cut in sharply, a dangerous edge to his voice. Stop talking. But Derek was already past listening, past caring. We're supposed to pretend she's some kind of victim? She left. She moved across the country and barely called. 288 calls, I stated quietly. The number's a cold, undeniable fact. Would you like me to show the log again? Silence. Utter, complete silence. The journalist's pen had stopped moving. He was just staring now, transfixed by the unfolding disaster. In the crowd, I saw a man I recognized from the news, a prominent real estate developer who'd partnered with my father on 2 previous projects. He was already, quietly heading for the exit. The first person to speak was not who I expected. It was an older gentleman with silver hair and the unshakable bearing of someone who'd spent decades closing multi-million-dollar boardroom deals. I recognized him from the earlier slideshow. Gerald Morrison, one of my father's oldest, most influential business associates. "Richard," his voice boomed, cutting through the horrified silence of the ballroom. "You owe $300,000 to contractors, and you're throwing a party that cost, what, 50? 60,000. Richard's jaw tightened, his face a mask of barely suppressed rage. "Gerald, this isn't. I was going to invest another $200,000 in your new development next month," Gerald interjected, his voice cold and final. He set down his champagne glass with a decisive, echoing clink. "I think I'll be reconsidering that." He walked toward the exit without a single backward glance, the very picture of quiet condemnation. Then the elderly aunt who had scolded me earlier, her face now transformed by something that looked like genuine, profound regret, approached the stage. "Young lady," she said quietly, her voice trembling, "I owe you an apology. I had no idea." Her eyes, filled with a newfound understanding, met mine. "Richard always said you were too busy to visit, that you preferred your independence." "I preferred a family that returned my phone calls, ma'am," I replied, my voice gentle now. She nodded slowly, then turned to look at Richard with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment? Disgust? Both, perhaps. More guests were leaving now. Not rushing. This crowd was too polished for that, but definitely, purposefully leaving. The whispers had irrevocably changed direction. Lawsuit against contractors tried to take her savings. She had receipts for everything. I saw Barbara, frantic, trying to intercept departing guests, her smile a desperate, grotesque mask. "This is all a misunderstanding. She's always been difficult. Richard is a wonderful father." No one was stopping to listen. The journalist in gray caught my eye and gave a sharp, almost imperceptible nod. Not approval, no, but a clear acknowledgement. This was a story now, and it would be in print by morning. Richard stood alone, utterly exposed, in the center of his own crumbling party, watching his empire disintegrate in real time. I stepped down from the stage. The remaining guests parted for me, their faces averted as if I was carrying something infectious, or perhaps something they didn't want to catch. Failure. Scandal. The brutal, unvarnished truth. Richard intercepted me halfway to the door, his eyes wild with desperation. Up close, I could see the deep lines around his eyes, the gray at his temples, the frantic calculations still working behind his expression. "Fiona!" His voice had dropped low, a desperate plea meant only for my ears. "You've made your point. Now, let's talk about how we fix this." "There's nothing to fix, Dad," I said, my voice empty of emotion. "I'm your father. Doesn't that mean anything?" I looked at him, truly looked at the man who was supposed to be my father, and I felt something I hadn't expected at all. Not anger, not triumph, just a deep, hollow, aching sadness. "I spent 8 years trying to be your daughter," I told him, each word a heavy stone. "You spent 8 years treating me like a backup bank account. I'm done auditioning for a role I was never, ever going to get." I pulled the authorization of fund transfer from my bag, the copy I'd photographed earlier. Slowly, deliberately, with a finality that echoed in the silent room, I tore it in half, then in quarters. "This is my answer," I said, placing the shredded pieces into his trembling hand. Barbara was crying now. Real tears or another performance. I couldn't tell. Derek had disappeared, probably to the open bar, numbing himself. The remaining guests pretended to examine the ornate ceiling, the glittering chandeliers, anything but the dying patriarch of Sterling Investments. I walked to the exit, pausing dramatically at the doorway. I tried for 8 years, I said, my voice carrying, loud and clear, for anyone still listening to hear. I don't need your approval anymore. From tonight, you don't have a daughter. I stepped out into the humid Houston night, the heavy door swinging, shut behind me with a decisive thud. For the first time in 8 years, I felt like I could truly breathe. But this wasn't the end. This was just the terrifying, liberating beginning of what came next. I called Marcus from the Houston airport at 11:47 p.m., the humid night air still clinging to me. I saw the video, he said before I could even speak. Someone posted it on Facebook 20 minutes ago. Fiona, are you okay? I'm okay, I replied, surprised to find the words were actually true. I'm at the airport taking the red-eye home. It's already got 1,200 views, he continued, his voice stunned. Comment section is intense. I hadn't even thought about the phones. Of course, people had recorded it. 87 witnesses with smartphones, all capturing the performance of my life. It's going to get worse before it gets better, I said, a weary acceptance in my tone. The journalist was from the Houston Business Journal. This will be in print by morning. Let it be. Marcus's voice was firm, reassuring. You told the truth. That's all you did. I watched a plane take off through the terminal window, its lights disappearing into the vast, indifferent darkness. I'm going to change my name, I announced, the words feeling both terrifying and exhilarating. Silence stretched on a line. I know it sounds drastic, I continued, my voice gaining conviction, but I've been thinking about it for months. I don't want to be Fiona Sterling anymore. I don't want that name. I don't want any connection to them. Is that even possible? He asked, a hint of awe in his voice. Yes, I replied, a small, grim smile forming. Colorado allows legal name changes for any reason that isn't fraud-related. I've already researched the process. The accountant in me is always 3 steps ahead. Filing fee is $98. Takes about 6 to 8 weeks. What name are you choosing? He asked softly. I smiled. The first real, unburdened smile I'd worn in hours. Violet Hayes, my grandmother's name, my mother's mother, the last person in my family who actually loved me without conditions. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Violet Hayes. I like it. I'm going to disappear, Marcus, I declared, a fierce resolve in my voice. New name, new city, new life. They won't be able to find me. And what about Derek, Barbara, Richard? Let them live with the consequences of their choices, I said, the word sharp. I'm done cleaning up their messes. Linda Hartwell's office was a small, unassuming space on the 3rd floor of a modest building in downtown Denver. She specialized in identity law, name changes, witness protection consultations, people starting over for one reason or another. Your situation is straightforward, she said, a kind, understanding smile on her face as she slid a folder across her desk. Colorado Revised Statutes, Section 13-15-1. You can petition for a legal name change as long as you're not doing it to evade creditors, escape criminal liability, or commit fraud. I just want to stop being a Sterling, I told her, the words tasting like freedom. That's a perfectly valid reason, Linda said, her smile widening. She'd clearly heard similar stories of escape before. Here's how the process works. We file a petition for change of name with the Denver District Court. $98 filing fee. The court sets a hearing date, usually within 6 to 8 weeks. Assuming no objections, the judge issues a court order, and your new name becomes legal. I looked at the form. Petitioner's current legal name, Fiona Claire Sterling. Proposed new legal name. I wrote, carefully, deliberately, Violet Marie Hayes. After the order is issued, Linda continued, you'll need to update your social security card, driver's license, passport, bank accounts, everything. It's tedious, but not complicated. And if my family tries to find me, I asked, a flicker of worry, Your new name is public record if they know where to look, she explained gently. But there's nothing requiring you to tell them. No forwarding address. No notification. You simply become a different person, legally speaking. I signed the petition. One more thing, Linda said as I stood to leave, her voice soft but firm. I've been doing this for 15 years. The people who change their names because they want to escape abusive or exploitative family situations, they almost never regret it. It's the ones who keep hoping the family will change who end up back in my office, heartbroken. I'm done hoping, I said, the words a quiet promise to myself. Good, she replied, her eyes warm. See you in 6 weeks, Miss Hayes. 8 weeks later, almost to the day, Fiona Sterling ceased to exist. The court order arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, a single, unassuming sheet of paper that, for me, changed everything. Case number 2024 CV 3892. In the matter of Fiona Claire Sterling, petitioner. The petition for change of name is hereby granted. The petitioner's legal name shall henceforth be Violet Marie Hayes. I stared at it for a long, shimmering time. Then I got to work. My house sold in just 3 weeks. A young couple with a new baby, excited about the neighborhood, thrilled by the price, a $285,000 cash offer. After paying off the remaining mortgage, I walked away with $112,000. I canceled my phone number, the same number I'd had for 12 years, the one I'd left on those 288 voicemails that were never returned. Gone. I deleted my email accounts, my Facebook profile, my LinkedIn. Everything that screamed Fiona Sterling disappeared from the digital world, erased without a trace. Marcus became my only connection to my old life. I gave him a P.O. box address in Portland, Oregon, for emergencies only. And if anyone asks, you haven't heard from me in years. They're already calling, he told me, his voice grim. Your father's assistant, some lawyer, they keep asking if I know where you are. You don't, I instructed, my voice firm. That's the truth. He nodded. Be safe, Violet. It felt strange hearing that name out loud. Strange, but so profoundly right. I boarded a plane to Portland on a gray June morning. New city, new name, new beginning. The woman who stepped off that plane wasn't Fiona Sterling anymore. The invisible daughter, the endless giver, the emergency bank account. She was Violet Hayes. And for the very first time in her 34 years, she belonged to nobody but herself. Marcus called me in November. I thought you'd want to know, he said, his voice quiet. It's over. I was sitting in my new apartment in Portland, watching the relentless rain streak down the windows. 11 stories up, overlooking the Willamette River. Small, yes, but profoundly mine. Sterling Heights foreclosed in July. First National couldn't secure additional capital. The project went into receivership. The bank took a loss of about $800,000. My father... I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Marcus paused. He lost everything. Fiona. Violet. Sorry, I'm still getting used to that. I didn't feel the surge of satisfaction I'd expected. Just a hollow, echoing finality, like watching a building you used to live in finally, inevitably collapse. The Houston Business Journal ran a follow-up piece last month. Marcus continued. Local developers, family drama, goes viral. 23,000 views online. They interviewed some of the guests from the party. Nobody's investing with him anymore. He paused again, and the house, that River Oaks property, went on the market in September. He needed to sell to cover the contractor lawsuits. The article said he was renting a condo in the suburbs now. I thought about the man I'd seen at the party. Silver hair, custom Tom Ford suit, surrounded by fawning admirers. The patriarch of the Sterling family, master of his domain, now living in a rental condo. His reputation in ruins. The Houston Real Estate Investors Association voted to revoke his membership, Marcus added, almost as an afterthought. Conduct unbecoming, or something like that. He's essentially blacklisted from every major deal in the city. I closed my eyes, a long, slow breath escaping me. Thank you for telling me. Are you okay? He asked, genuine concern in his voice. Was I? I wasn't sure. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vengeful. I just felt distant, like I was reading about someone else's life, a story already written. I'm okay, I said. I'm building something new. Derek tried to find me first. Marcus told me about it in January, his voice tinged with a strange mix of pity and exasperation. My half-brother had apparently spent 3 frantic weeks attempting to track me down through every channel he could imagine. He messaged my old Facebook account deactivated, called my old phone number disconnected, emailed my old Gmail account no longer exists. He even showed up at Morrison and Blake Consulting, asking for Fiona Sterling. Our receptionist, sharp and properly trained, politely told him, "No one by that name works here." Because Violet Hayes's personnel file made no mention of a previous identity. He even drove to my old house in Denver. The new owners, understandably confused, simply told him the previous owner had moved 6 months ago. No forwarding address. No, they didn't know where. He seems desperate, Marcus said. Not hostile, just lost. I processed this information carefully. Derek had never been truly cruel, I mused. Just entitled. Thoughtless. The unfortunate product of parents who'd given him everything and expected absolutely nothing in return. He sent a letter to your old address, Marcus continued. The new owners forwarded it to me, since I handled the sale paperwork. Do you want me to send it to you? I thought about it for a long, heavy moment. Yes, I finally said. The letter arrived a week later, handwritten on plain notebook paper. Derek's penmanship had always been terrible. I remembered teasing him about it when we were younger, before everything fell apart. Fiona! It began, the messy scrawl almost endearing. I don't know if you'll ever read this. I'm sorry. I didn't know about the phone calls. I didn't know about the money. Mom, Barbara, she controlled everything, and I just went along with it because it was easier. I'm working at Best Buy now. Floor sales, minimum wage plus. Commission. It's humiliating and exhausting, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. For the first time in my life, I'm earning something instead of just receiving it. Dad lost everything. You probably know that. Mom, Barbara, she moved out last month. They're getting divorced. He's alone in that condo, drinking too much, calling old contacts who won't take his calls. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for him. I'm not even asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to know that I understand now what it's like to work for something. What it's like to be ignored by people who are supposed to care. What it's like to realize you were wrong about everything. I'm trying to be better. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I wanted you to know I'm trying. Your brother, if you'll still have me. Derek. I folded the letter carefully, deliberately, and put it back in its envelope. Then I got a fresh sheet of paper and wrote my response. Short, clear, honest. Derek, I read your letter. I'm glad you're learning, but I'm not ready for a relationship with anyone from that family. Maybe someday, maybe never. I hope you understand. Violet. I mailed it the next day. No return address. Here's what nobody tells you about setting boundaries. It feels incredibly selfish until it doesn't. For 8 long, draining years, I'd measured my worth by how much I could give to people who never, ever gave anything back. Every unanswered call was a test I'd failed. Every ignored gift was proof I wasn't trying hard enough. I'd built my entire identity around being the good daughter, the reliable one, the family member who always showed up. And what had it gotten me? A humiliating spot at a birthday party, meticulously designed to extract my life savings. Sitting in my Portland apartment, watching the winter rain fall, I finally, truly understood something that had taken 34 years to learn. Boundaries aren't walls. They're not about shutting people out. They're about deciding who gets access to your life and on what terms. I didn't hate Richard. I didn't hate Barbara. I didn't even hate Derek, who was finally, painstakingly, starting to become the person he should have been all along. I just didn't have space for them anymore. My therapist, and yes, I'd started seeing one, a gentle, understanding woman named Dr. Coleman, who specialized in family estrangement, called it radical acceptance. "You're not responsible for their choices," she said during one of our sessions. "You're only responsible for yours. And you chose to protect yourself. That's not selfish. That's survival." I thought about all the years I'd spent hoping they would change, all the energy I'd poured into a relationship that only flowed in one excruciating direction. Now I used that energy for other things, for friendships that truly nourished me, for work that genuinely fulfilled me, for a life that was finally mine alone. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger. It was something far simpler and infinitely more powerful. It was self-respect, and that, I realized, was worth more than any inheritance could ever be. Spring finally came to Portland in early March. Cherry blossoms burst into vibrant pink along the streets. Sunshine, bright and hopeful, broke through the perpetual gray clouds. The whole city seemed to exhale, a collective sigh of relief after months of damp chill. I was sitting at my favorite coffee shop near the waterfront, laptop open, reviewing projections for a client meeting when my phone buzzed. "Dinner tonight. That new Thai place. Sarah." I smiled, a genuine, easy smile, and typed back, "Yes. 7 p.m. perfect. Bring your appetite. I'm ordering everything." I closed my laptop and looked out the window. A young couple strolled by with a baby in a stroller. An old man patiently fed pigeons on the corner. A group of tourists laughed, taking photos of the iconic bridges. Ordinary moments. The kind I'd spent 8 years desperately waiting to share with a family that never wanted to share them with me. Now, I shared them with people who actually showed up. My savings account was recovering. Slower than before, but steady, resilient. Pacific Northwest Financial had just offered me a senior position with a raise. I was even thinking about buying a small condo, maybe something with a view of the river. For the very first time in my life, I was making plans without factoring in what my family might need from me. I used to think that family was blood, that being a Sterling meant something fundamental about who I was and what I owed, that if I just tried hard enough, loved hard enough, gave enough of myself, eventually they would love me back. I was so utterly wrong. Family isn't blood. Family is the people who choose to be in your life, who call you back, who show up without being asked, who want nothing from you except your presence. I'm Violet Hayes now, 35 years old, an accountant. And for the first time in my life, I know exactly who my family is. They're the ones who chose me, just as I am. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of my story. If you've ever been treated like an ATM by the people who are supposed to love you, if you've ever felt invisible, or like you constantly had to earn your place in your own family, I want you to know you are not alone. And walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the bravest, most life-affirming thing you can possibly do. Please like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's next. And check out the other stories in the description. I truly believe you'll find something there that speaks to your heart. I'm Violet Hayes. New name, new life. And I'm finally, truly home.